Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing this evening? It's I, Steve the Amateur Historian. And, no, I did not almost drop a pair of scissors and cut my toes off. Steve the Amateur Historian. Don't try to be cute with a pair of scissors in your hand. You've learned a lesson. So a couple months ago, I actually tried doing this, and it was during that period, if some of you remember, where my speaker was all clogged up, and it was messing with my videos, and I kept trying to clean it out. It just wasn't working, and finally I got it all cleared out, and everything was working again. So the video I recorded previously was garbage. The audio was all muffled and screwed up, but because I've been doing this consistently for about a year and a half, pretty much since the pandemic started, I'm going to go with you. A lot of people like to just show their collections. I'm not doing it to show off. I'm just showing you what I've got, because most people around my age don't necessarily have what I have in terms of music as the, primary music that they listen to. Because I pretty much don't really like most music done after like 1990, even the early 90s. So anyway, you and I, if you want to join me, we're going to go through my ever-growing record collection. I'm going to go through all these with you. I don't even know exactly how many I have. I have at least like 15 more than I did when I tried to do this movie a few months ago. And before we get into the video of me going through and showing you my record collection, I just got a few more in the mail, so we're going to open those, and I'm going to show those off or whatever, and then we'll get over to the rest of my collection. All right, let's just dig in. We're going to start with this one that I got from ME. That's Maine, right? Pointing the scissors up at me. You think I would be old enough to be smarter with scissors, and you'll notice I'm cutting in my direction. Another thing you're not supposed to do with scissors. This whole video is really just kind of an explanation as to things you shouldn't do. You'd think you'd be old enough to be smarter about stuff. So that's part of it. Here we go. Oh, I like it. Oh, this is in pretty good condition. My first original favorite band was the band Dire Straits. One of my favorite songs of all time is a song of theirs called Telegraph Road from their album Love Over Gold. So that's two vinyls of the 6 albums they did. Some fan I am. I've still got like 4 albums of theirs to get. Or 3. Obviously, I will include these into my collection later. See, this one I can already tell isn't even put together that well. Oh, but they appreciate our purchase. This one's coming to me from, I thought that said Glenn Beck. I was like, what? Illinois. Oh, hell yeah, brother. My first ever Psychedelic Furs album. My favorite Psychedelic Furs album as well. Midnight to Midnight. Oh, I love it when you get them and they got that original, obviously it's been open, but it's still got like the original just wearing out warping plastic, this like fading yellow purchase sticker that's probably been there since 1987. That was oh my lord. I don't know if you're getting the right light reflection. This is one of the cleanest vinyls I've ever... Look at that. That is one of the cleanest vinyls I've ever gotten. You gonna slide out for me? Ooh, I think I know what this is. Because I got a lot of records. Not a lot of records, but a lot of records. This is eBay jargon. So I'm pretty sure this is... Yes! This was my first favorite... I said Dire Straits was my first favorite band. They were my first favorite band when I actually started regularly listening to music when I was like 14. This was my favorite band when I was like 7, even though I didn't understand any of their lyrics. And I have their original album, and I want to get a lot more albums. And their stuff is not horribly expensive on eBay, but it's a little bit expensive. Usually it's like, $10 to $15 an album, but I got 3 of their albums. 3 that I don't have, 3 that I actually want, for like $15. And that's the Cars. If you don't like the Cars, well, I don't give a shit. That's what makes the world go around, you know? I love music, you love music, we love music. I like what I like, you like what you like, and not all the time, and in fact, probably very rarely will all of our musical preferences fall in line. I like what I like, and if you don't like that, well, then you probably, I don't know why you're watching this video. But yeah, I got 3 vinyls. Really, I remember my dad had a lot of LPs. I honestly should have stolen some when I left home. But I remember I always loved the Cars one that flopped out like this. It's very 80s on the inside. So yeah, Heartbeat City from 84. Ooh, I got Candio. Is this YouTube appropriate? I sound like a freaking dad. This is from 79. Yeah. I'll check the state of these LPs later. You're probably excited, I guess, to get to the rest of my... God, it's one of these ones where the album doesn't want to go back into the sleeve easily. Okay, and Shake It Up. 1981? Yes. All right. So those came for me today. And, let's say we get to the rest of my collection. All right, it's about 25 minutes later because I realized when I did this last time, I went through all my vinyls one by one, and when I moved them from here to here, they were actually out of order. They were like way out of order. And of course, the last like 20 vinyls I've bought, I haven't added in yet, so they've just been kind of off by themselves. And I have these in alphabetical order based on band or, you know, individual performer, and if it's an individual performer, they're put in there based on their last name. Bruce Springsteen would be in the S section for reference. So they're in most logical form that I could do it is alphabetical order, and also with each individual performer, chronological order. So, you know, the order in which the albums by that given performer came out. So before I go into my, the albums that I actually have in their individual sleeves, I got, and I still need to get sleeves for them. I'm kind of just keeping them secluded together. They're quarantined, if you will. And I need to get sleeves for them because I bought these because I got 5 albums for like 10 bucks. And they're all in pretty good condition. I just need to get sleeves because they said like these come just individually. UPS. So I'm going to do this band's albums first just because they're kind of out. And I don't have them just shoved in with all the rest of my albums since I want to keep them sequestered. But I have 5 LPs, 4 albums from ELO, Electric Light Orchestra. Or Electric Lights Orchestra, as I called them. Not realizing it was singular. Actually, wait a minute. I should have one of you supporting here, and one of you supporting down here, so that I'm actually taking you from something safe and setting you down on something safe. I'm a good record owner. Maybe. Now there's Out of the Blue, which I believe was a 78 album, and it's like 18, it's real nice and shiny. There's excuse me, I've got all this dust from going through these LPs in my system now. So that album is like 18 songs, so it's actually a double-sided album, so double vinyl. In addition to that, I did not realize how much I would love, this might be my favorite Electric Light Orchestra album, which is A New World Record. Interesting. Record. It's an old dad pun, I guess. I also have Face the Music, which is also a pretty good album. Yeah. And finally, and I haven't listened to this one yet, but it's El Dorado, which I believe, wasn't that a soundtrack? No, this is an earlier album. I'm thinking of like the Xanadu thing. But I mean Electric Light Orchestra. So I just got those done first out of the way because they are alone. And I'm probably going to end up breaking this video into 2 parts because of how many vinyls I have to go through. This is about half of them right here. and I just took forever cutting into those new ones, which I did. I said I was going to do it later, but I have ingratiated them into my collection, so you'll see them again, but I won't spend too much time talking about them. So alphabetical order means if it's just a number, the band's name starts with a number, they're just at the front of the line. You can put them at the front, put them at the back, still do alphabetical. I just put numbered ones first. I only have one album by a band that has a number that starts their band name, and that's 38 Special. Tour de Force. A very simple album, but one that I first heard on audio cassette several years ago and really love. It's just every song is it's just got some charm to it. I'm gonna try to put these face side down so they'll still stay in proper alphabetical order and not be completely out of order. All right, next in line, we've got the Canadian legend himself, Bryan Adams. I have 3 Bryan Adams albums. I got You Want It, You Got It. I want to get Cuts Like a Knife. Haven't gotten it yet, but I found this. This was a, if you watch the video I did when I was out antiquing, I wanted to buy Reckless because it's like his big breakout album. And I found this when we were antiquing, and I was like, hey, oh, bought. And then finally an album that, I get why people don't like it as much, but I feel like it's a little underappreciated, Into the Fire. So, you know, I love all these 70s and 80s performers that also went on into the 90s and the 2000s, like Bryan Adams is still doing stuff now, but because they're vinyl, a lot of these performers I love, I don't really get any albums they do at the end of the 80s because either vinyls are practically non-existent for them, or they are existent and they're insanely expensive because they're, you know, once we got into the 90s, vinyls were, you know, kind of out. And now, of course, they've come back around and become super popular again. Okay, so this is, I believe, the only band... No, it's not accurate. Okay, this is the only band that did several albums, did more than like just 1 or 2 albums, wherein I have every album that they've ever done. This was the first band that I bought a big lot of records from at once, or 4 at once. I didn't buy them directly from the band. And that... Wow. That was sad. And that's the Alan Parsons Project. Horribly underappreciated. You know, their music didn't, you know, reinvent the wheel, but they were just constantly good. And this was their first album, Tales of Mystery and Imagination, which actually, as I understand it, you know, don't take my music history that I know for absolute certainty, because some of this I'm doing based on something I heard second, third, fourth, fifth person, or something I heard a long time ago and I might have not maintained the information right. But as I understand it, Alan Parsons Project, like this first album, it was like that was all they were really fully planning on doing. They just wanted to get together and do this interesting concept album. And then after that came out, you know, they liked what was going on and they ended up making more albums. That was followed with iRobot in 77. That was followed by Pyramid, which I love this album cover. And this came out in 78. And Pyramid. And then 79, this is one of the first vinyls. This is one of the first 10 vinyls I bought. I bought it at that antique store in Milwaukee where JFK sat down in once. And that is Eve. In fact, this $3 sticker, or one of these $3 stickers, is the sticker that antique shop put on it. And I never noticed, because I realized later on that, you know, the use of Eve is like Adam and Eve, and it was actually like a Battle of the Sexes album. And if you actually look at and listen to the songs, you realize so many of the songs are very sexist in nature and done that way intentionally. Like they're just these really crappy male perspectives. Like there's You Lie Down with Dogs is the name of a song. I'd Rather Be a Man. That kind of speaks for itself. A song, You Won't Be There, is about, you know, a man feeling abandoned by his woman, more or less. Winding Me Up, Damned If I Do. All these songs about kind of, you know, being in these busted up relationships. But then it's interesting because men sing all the songs primarily, and then the last 2 songs are sung by women, and the very last song is called If I Could Change Your Mind, which in my opinion is the best song on this album, one of the best songs that Alan Parsons Project ever did, and all of a sudden you're hearing an emotional, heartfelt song from the female perspective, and it takes that whole sexist nature that dominates the early part of the album and flips it on its side. At least that's how I took away from it. Followed by... I don't know if I can say it's my least favorite. It's in my bottom 2 or 3 is Turn of a Friendly Card, which Alan Parsons Project purists will be like, but games people play in Time are on there. How can you not love it? I'm like, I like it. There's not an album they did I don't like. I'm just saying this is probably my least favorite. And also the one with the case is probably in the best condition. And this one is followed by probably my favorite Alan Parsons Project album, Eye in the Sky, which of course has the famous Eye in the Sky track. It also has the famous instrumental Sirius. But I mean, from beginning to end, I really love this album. Silence and I, You're Gonna Get Your Fingers Burned, Old and Wise, all just top notch. And that was followed by 2 albums that I actually believe came out the same year. I think these both came out in '84. And then they came out with another album in '85. And I know that some of the personnel, Alan Parsons personally, doesn't think these albums are quite up to par with some other ones. And I disagree, respectfully, of course. '84, they came out with Ammonia Avenue, which I think is a really solid album. And then the album, which is probably my second favorite album, which is, I always tend to love the stuff that other people who love a certain band love the least. Because I don't think this is an album that a lot of Alan Parsons Project fans would put in like their top 3, but this is probably my second favorite after Eye in the Sky, is this album, Vulture Culture. It's a simple yet lovable album cover, but it has my favorite Alan Parsons Project song on it, which is Days Are Numbers. So it's a little extra thing that helps push it up towards the front. And then the last 2 albums that they came out, '85, Stereotomy. And finally, their last official Alan Parsons Project album, Gaudi, in relation to, is it Antonio Gaudi. I knew it was Antonio. What the hell's wrong with me? And this is technically the last album that they did. They worked on a project right after called Freudiana, which was, I think, pretty much a soundtrack done for a play that was going to be done, but it ended up ultimately becoming an Eric Wolfson album. And Eric Wolfson and Alan Parsons were like the 2 guys that pretty much ran the show for the Alan Parsons Project, and Eric Wolfson sang a lot of their most famous songs. All right, moving on to a new band. This band I absolutely love. They only did 2 albums in their heyday, but they came up with another album just a couple of years ago, and that is the Canadian, I believe they're Canadian band Boulevard. And this was their first album, even though music they did dated back to the early 80s, and this came out in '88, if I'm correct. Yeah, I really, really love this band. I love this album. I want to get their second album. That came out in 1990, but it costs a pretty penny from what I've gathered. Okay, so that's the only Boulevard album I have. And here, this album has so much sentimental value for me. I remember being a little kid, and I remember being like 2-3 years old when this album was fairly new. And I remember my parents listening to the songs on here. I remember having dreams that like were set to some of the songs from this album. So, you know, I heard stuff from this album a lot as a kid, and then didn't hear it again until I was in like my early 20s, and it was very nostalgic, even though I didn't really remember it all that well. So this is an album that like dates back to my earliest memories, and that is the first album by the band Breathe, All That Jazz, a very very poppy late 80s album, put out by Virgin Records. Yeah, but I when I listened to this again for the first time in years, I even just recognized random names, even though I didn't really remember a lot of the songs that were on there. And that brings us to a band I just referenced, because I just got 3 albums from them tonight, that being the Cars. This is the only Cars album that I had prior to tonight, and it's their very first album, and I only have this because my girlfriend's family gave it to me. And of course, this album had Good Times Roll, which I don't like that much, but had My Best Friend's Girl, Just What I Needed, You're All I've Got Tonight, Bye Bye Love, Moving in Stereo. It's a lot of songs that helped catapult them to stardom right out of the gates. And then the very next year, they did Candio, which I obviously just opened, and they did Panorama. Oh, I was like, why is this so flimsy? It's because I put this in the record player and was listening to it while I was organizing these. Then they did Panorama, then they did Shake It Up, and then they did Heartbeat City in 84. And I really want to get their, well, what was originally their last album, which is Door to Door, but they came out with Move Like This in, I think, 2011. I'd love to get that on vinyl, too. That album, for a band that hadn't performed in almost a quarter of a century, Move Like This, it's like they didn't even lose a step, even after their lead singer, Benjamin Orr, who I'll get back to later in this collection, even after he unfortunately passed away, they still, like, they didn't miss a beat. The album sounds so much like something they would have done, like, in 1980, 81, 82. That said, from the Cars, we go to, and I'm sure this is another situation that's going to piss off purist fans of this band, because I really only like their music from the early to mid-80s to, like, the start of the 90s. And that be Chicago. I don't know what that was for. So this is Chicago 17, I believe. This is the last one that Peter Cetera did with them. Has Hard Habit to Break, Along Comes the Woman, Along Comes a Woman, You're the Inspiration. Just a lot of good stuff from beginning to end, in my opinion. And then he left, and they came out with Chicago 18, which you'd think might suck since they just lost their, like, iconic singer, but this album is pretty solid in my opinion. You can see that kind of the band was kind of shifting in a new direction, but they still got the horn arrangements. They do a pretty good poppy 80s rendition of 25 or 6 to 4, and it's good. But my favorite Chicago album has to be Chicago 19. Again, I'm a 80s music guy, so I hear something like this album, and it makes anything Chicago did album-wise during the 70s just not quite match. Again, my opinion. This is who I am. It's how I was born. But yeah, I absolutely love Chicago 9. I love the album cover too. It's a little chaotic. It's like 13 minds coming together. So those are the Chicago albums that I own. And someone who is so unjustly ridiculed, especially considering how much he's given to music, how gifted of a musician he is, and how much he really loves what he does. He didn't just do it to become popular, which a lot of people think this guy just fully sold out in the 80s. And he's, really chill from what I've gathered, and there's just so much freaking energy to his music. And if there's no real energy to music, then I'm not interested. If I can't have some kind of emotional connection, even if it's a small one, to a song or someone's, catalog of music that they've done, I'm not going to be interested. And that's why I really don't like, I don't hate everything that's been done the last, 25, 30 years, but most contemporary music, most music that's been done in the new millennium is stuff I just don't feel any connection to. It's so thin and vapid and redundant, and it's just the same crap over and over again. And I'm actually glad to see that there's some performers out there who are getting fairly popular, or who already have been fairly popular, that are kind of shifting back into kind of older music styles, be it, kind of the R&B sound of the 80s specifically, or, a lot of music is kind of adding elements of 80s new wave to them, which makes sense with how electric music is nowadays. And you think about how many electric elements went into 80s new wave. The only thing is that they did it well. Nowadays, you just have someone in a room throwing a beat together, they get in some famous person, and they just sing some crap over it. And it just doesn't do anything for me. It never has, and it never will, at least as long as music's going that direction. That was a long ramble. That was all roundabout way of getting to a Phil Collins album. No Jacket Required. Iconic. I need not say more. Look at him. I mean, his face is red. He's ready to rock. And one song I absolutely love on here is his song, I Don't Want to Know. And the reason I love that song so much is that it's, people will say, this song was written for me. This song is about me. The lyrics to that song genuinely sync up so amazingly well with the girl I went to prom with that it's mind-boggling to me. I'll just leave it at that. So you can go listen to that song, and maybe you can get a vibe for what that experience was like for me. God, we're just finishing up with the C's. This was an album I actually bought for my girlfriend, and I have a few more vinyls over here that are strictly her vinyls. A lot of Crowded House. which I love as well. She loves Crowded House, so a few things over there. This is one I technically bought for my girlfriend, but I feel like she's never really going to listen to it, so I've kind of moved it over to my collection. Don't tell her. And that is Cutting Crew's first album, Broadcast, which is the song that has the iconic I Just Died in Your Arms. And I remember listening to it once, and I liked the very first song on the album, Any Color, and I like I Just Died in Your Arms, and that was it. So I was like, this is kind of a crap album. You know, there's 10 songs, and only 2 of them are any good. So I went back and listened to it several years after listening to it for the first time. I actually listened to it on here, because I was like, why not? You know, I bought this a long time ago for my girlfriend, so we got this record player, but we only had 4 or 5 vinyls to listen to. So I'm like, well, it's this or not a lot of other stuff. And I listened to it, and pretty much every song on there I like now. That is a bizarre thing that happens with me. I'll give an album 2, 3 tries, and it won't do anything for me. And then I'm like, okay, one more try. Let's just see if I like it. And then I listen to it again, and I love it. I don't know. I obviously have problems. And then we move on to another band that I got an album for tonight. One of my, my first favorite band when I first started regularly listening to music when I was a teenager, Dire Straits. And their amazing album, Making Movies, even though the album kind of dies near the end. There's only 7 songs on here, and I like the first 5 and the last 2, especially the last song on this album, which is called, I think it's called Lease Boys. It's spelled Less Boys, but it's called, they say Lease Boys, is by far my least favorite. It totally feels like just a thing they threw in at the end. It just doesn't do anything for me, but mostly everything else leading up to that is amazing, and it has the song Romeo and Juliet on here, which is fantastic 80s song, and they did a succession of music videos for songs on this album that all had the same vibe to them. They're these very intriguing videos. And then, of course, I got Love Over Gold tonight. Their first album is coming in the mail. It should be here within the week. So obviously I'm going to be continuing adding stuff to my collection. It's never going to stop. And yeah, so there's a couple more albums of theirs that I want to get. That brings us to the E's, namely the Eagles and On the Border. And I remember the first time I ever heard this album was I was visiting, me and my mom were visiting my uncle in Sacramento. And the first night we got there, they went out to, go drink with some friends, and I was left at my uncle's house, and I was bored, and I was like 15, and I was kind of a strange kid at that time, and I did some stuff that I kind of regret doing. So I started, rummaging through some of my uncle's, not his stuff, but I started rummaging through, his audio cassettes, because I'm like, I want to listen to some music. And I found, and I didn't really know, I knew some of the Eagles hits, but I didn't really know their albums individually, and I found an audio cassette of this and listened to it several times. And I was so happy because I got home from the trip and found that my dad actually had the same audio cassette. But anyway, the first time I listened to On the Border was sitting at my uncle's house in Sacramento. And fortunately, my dad had a copy of it, so I was able to make a recording of that, and I had this on audio cassette for a really long time. This is one I bought a while ago. This is one of those first 10 or so albums that I bought. I also bought this at that Milwaukee antique shop. Probably my favorite album. I give it a slight nudge over Hotel California, and it's One of These Nights. I love it from beginning to end. There's not one song on here that I don't like or that I regularly want to skip if I'm listening to the album the whole way through. Hotel California is also in the mail. It's going to be another one that's going to be here within the week. And another one that I just recently bought during my excursion with my girlfriend, my first Foreigner album, Foreigner 4. Probably their most popular album cover, the film Countdown. It's got Jukebox Hero, which is I'm kind of about. My girlfriend hates with a passion. But you've got Waiting for a Girl Like You, and probably my favorite one on the album, even though a lot of these songs I don't really remember, but Urgent, iconic. Here we go. Here's another band that I hope to someday have all of their LPs, and I've actually got a lot of them for now. I talked about Phil Collins a little earlier. I got me my Genesis. This is their second album. I want to get their first album, Tales of Mystery and Imagination, which was very much a, someone got this young talent together, which included Mike Rutherford, Peter Gabriel, to, make this album, not this one, but their first album, And they just wanted him to churn out, you know, these 2 to 3 minute tracks and make some hits. And it didn't really work out that well. And it isn't really what they wanted. They wanted to get a little more experimental with their music. And finally they got their chance when they came out with their second album here, Trespass, which is a polar opposite. You know, instead of having like 15 songs that are all like 2 or 3 minutes, these like, you know, late 60s pop songs, there's only 6 songs on this album, but only one of them is like shorter than 5.5, 6 minutes. So this kind of started the stage for the Peter Gabriel era of Genesis, of which Foxtrot, their 4th album, is the only one from that era that I haven't gotten, of course, aside from Genesis to Revelation, their first one. And that transitioned into Nursery Crime, which came out in 1971? Yes. And this was where Phil Collins joined the band and became their drummer. And when Peter Gabriel left, he ended up becoming their lead singer. And then I believe Foxtrot came out, and then or maybe Foxtrot came out, and I can't remember all of a sudden. I usually know my Genesis stuff really good. But I was so lucky. The early Genesis albums are kind of hard to find for a cheap price. You're lucky if you can find one of them for 15 bucks. Someone put both of these up for 10 bucks, free shipping on eBay. And I was like, you know what? These albums are probably beat to hell. And that's why they're selling, because there's no way. Either they're beat to hell, so the guy's selling them on the cheap, or this person doesn't realize what they have. So I got these in the mail, and I'm just like, oh, no. Oh, what dump truck ran over these? And I don't know how well you can tell. This is Nursery Crime, and it's in pristine condition. Blew me away. So I'm like, okay. But that's only one of these 2 albums. There's no way they're both looking that good. You know what I mean? There's just no damn way. So, you know, here I am. I'm begrudgingly popping open Selling England by the Pound, which is an album I love as well. And I'm just like, who's cat peed all over this? And if anything, this one is even better condition than Nursery Crime. I got 2 pristine Peter Gabriel era Genesis albums for pretty much less than the usual asking price of one. Like, the only reason I haven't bought Foxtrot yet is because, like, the cheapest copy you can find online is, like, around 20 bucks. Someday. And then this, finally, the last Peter Gabriel era Genesis album, The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. The only LP that I've spent upwards of $30 to get, because you know, I don't have that much money to throw around. So I usually buy these on the cheap. It's the reason why a lot of my most favorite albums I haven't bought yet, because you can't find them for under like 30, 40 bucks, and I'm just not going to drop that kind of money on one vinyl right now. But this 2-sided fever dream that is spelled the last hurrah of Peter Gabriel with this band. You know, the first time I heard it, it's just a chaotic mess to me. And I still don't fully understand it. I kind of generally get the storyline, but the songs are so crazy that it's really hard to fully grasp. But I don't care. I love it. And there's a guy on YouTube, and I wish to God I could remember his name right now, but he's done like animated pieces to go with Genesis songs and various other stuff. He did a full animated representation of their song Supper's Ready, which is like a 26-minute long solo song. He did a whole animated piece to go with this whole album. And this, because it's, you know, it's a 2-sided album. This album's like an hour and a half long, and he did a whole animated thing with that. If I remember, I'll try to put the link to that in the description with this, because it's awesome. And I've actually sat through and watched the whole thing. Then you get to the post-Peter Gabriel era. This is the second album they did after he left. There was Trick of the Tail, and then Wind and Wuthering came after. I really like this album. I like it a little bit more than Trick of the Tail. Again, I'm sure Genesis purists will be like, what? And then after that, their guitarist left, and there was only not Peter Gabriel. There was only Phil Collins, Tony Banks, and Mike Rutherford left. 3 people. Hence, their next album came out in '78, was And Then There Were Three, an album I think is unfairly panned. I enjoy it. It's not the greatest thing they ever did, but I still enjoy it. And it had the track Follow You, Follow Me, which that was like a rare moment where they kind of had like a #1 hit doing kind of a poppy love song. They weren't really known for that. And then, of course, an album that, whether you love the Peter Gabriel era or the Phil Collins era more, everybody kind of agrees that this is a pretty awesome album. This is Duke, came out in 1980. Awesome. Then they did Abacab, which I'll probably get someday just because I can get it cheap and there's some stuff I love on it. And then there's their self-titled Genesis album, which usually this kind of thing is reserved for a band's first album. But this is what, like their 10th album? Not their 10th album? But pretty awesome. And I really go in opposition to a lot. I've watched people who are like Genesis fans, and they're obviously leaning more towards the prog rock side than the pop side, which is fine. We like what we like. Because the first side is the side that's kind of hit heavy. It's got Mama, That's All, Home by the Sea. And then people are always like, I hate side 2 except for Silver Rainbow. And to me, Silver Rainbow is by far the worst song on side 2. And that, again, I like the song, but I like this other stuff better. So, minds go off in different directions. And here's an album. Now, I'm planning on buying, obviously I have all these vinyls and we have this cheap record player. I'm glad we have it. It's better than having nothing at all. But I do want to eventually get a better quality record player that plays things a little more cleanly. Because some vinyls, it just won't play right. And one of them is my One Glass Tiger album that I owned, Diamond Sun. I want to get their first album. I forget what it's called. But yeah. So I'm glad to at least have one. But this album had real issues playing on our player. And it's, I was thinking this album was kind of bent and curved, so it was like playing like this. But I'm looking at it now, and I'm really not seeing that. I just think, and it's got some smudges and stuff, but not enough that it shouldn't be playing for, and it was not playing properly at all. Maybe if I gave it another try, it would play. Some LPs, this cheap record player just doesn't play right. So yeah, I've only listened to like the first minute of Diamond Sun, which is the first name of the album and the first song on side 1, and it just was not playing right. So I was like, just forget it. I'll play it someday again. Is that somebody spilled some like milk on this thing before? I'm not saying, again, I'm buying these on the cheap. I don't expect everything to be in perfect condition. And in fact, because a lot of these old albums are albums from that time, they're not, ones that have been reissued in the last 10, 15 years or whatever with the sudden spike in popularity of vinyl again. A lot of these are going to be kind of beat up because, most of them are as old, if not older than I am. And I like that element. I don't mind getting a vinyl that's got like, bends and curves and it's got a little corner ripped out of it. I like that. I like that rustic look to them, that original vibe. And all that said, we are to the Jays. Even though I know technically their band, everybody calls them Hall & Oates, even though they've always gone by Daryl Hall and John Oates. But everyone calls them Hall & Oates, so I have it in the H as opposed to the D. Private Eyes. I really love a lot of the 70s stuff they did, but most of the albums they did in the 70s, it was like if there was 10 songs, I liked 5 of them. And I really don't want to invest money into a vinyl if I'm only going to like half the songs and want to skip a bunch of stuff. So that's why I really don't have a major vested interest in getting anything from the 70s. But their 80s stuff I do, love. You'll notice that in my collection, a lot of bands that were popular in the 70s and 80s, I have more of their 80s stuff than their 70s stuff. I am an 80s music bitch. But yeah, I love this album. And then following that, we've got Hall & Oates. I say that like I haven't mentioned them. I meant H2O. Hall 2 Oates. Just a bunch of sweat on some skin. And yeah, I've always loved like this part of it where they're just, it looks like they're about ready to fight. And I've always felt like Daryl Hall here kind of looks like Chris Pratt. I don't know. Maybe And this, I bought this before, and I also bought this at the that Milwaukee Antique Mall, but I bought this like 4 years ago, and I bought this as a joke. It was $1. I was like, I'll buy this just to have. I had no idea at the time that I was going to start actually getting, starting collecting vinyls. So I bought this for $1 because me and my girlfriend love this band. And it's original. It's a piece from the 60s. It's got like a water stain. And it's Herman's Hermits. If you don't like Herman's Hermits, you can go jump off a bridge right now. And this album, it doesn't have Henry VIII, which of course is our favorite, but it does have I'm Into Something Good, which is another famous one. And I swear when I bought this, it was all beat to hell. I was like, this isn't even gonna play. But I don't care because I'm just buying it like as a joke. But now I look at it, and it's like in almost pristine condition. And this is an LP that's like almost as old as my mom is. Like seriously, because this is obviously an original from the 60s. This isn't like some reissue. And it's I'm not seeing the actual production or release date. I don't know, maybe they put that in some hidden spot or yeah, I don't know. It doesn't say. But this is like an original one from the 60s. So, so it's actually in like really good shape, and I need to listen to this at some point. And that brings us to, this will be the last 2 vinyls I show in this part 1 video, and then I'll save the rest in this very thick pile over here for part 2. So let's finish out with another band that did 3 albums. Their lead guy has gone on and done a lot of solo albums since then that I really just don't vibe with that much. I'm not quite into a lot of the sound. I'm sure a lot of other people love it, but the stuff that I like of his as a solo artist are very few and far between. But this original album that he was with, they did 3 albums, and I've gotten, just in the last 2 weeks, I've gotten 2 of them, and I want to get the 3rd at some point. And that is Bruce Hornsby and the Range. Bruce Hornsby and the Range, they had 9 songs on this album, and then which I also just recently got, Scenes from the South Side, their 2nd album. This album also has 9 songs, and then their last album they did as Bruce Hornsby and the Range was, I think they did a couple singles, was Night on the Town, which I think had 11 songs. So 11 plus 9 is 20. So they did 29 songs, and I like 28 of them. Another Day, which is a song on Night on the Town, is probably the only song that they ever did that I really don't like. And it's probably the song from this Range era that sounds the most like what Bruce Hornsby did as a solo artist later on. Again, I'm not trying to knock his solo stuff. It's just not what I'm into. It's almost a little too I don't really know how to describe it. But I really loved the Range. I remember, like, everybody's heard The Way It Is. And that was the only, and I remember the first time I heard it, how distinct the piano playing sounded to me, because of course Bruce Hornsby has a very distinct piano style. It's very like, it just kind of feels like he's just kind of slapping his fingers down on the keyboard. And he does the backing keyboard for The End of the Innocents that Don Henley sang. And actually there's like live albums where Bruce Hornsby has done his own rendition of The End of the Innocents. So I remember just thinking that song sounded so distinct, not necessarily because of his voice, not necessarily because of what The Way It Is was about, but just the way that the piano sounded. And I'm a massive Billy Joel fan, and I like Elton John and stuff, so I like all these performers that are predominantly, piano players or keyboardists. And even still, his stuff sounded very, or at least in that song, sounded very distinct to me, so it made me want to hear more of their stuff. So I check out their first album on CD at the library, and I liked every single song on it. So I was like, oh, hot damn, well, I'll check out this one and listen to it. I liked every song on that. Then I checked out Night on the Town, and I pretty much liked everything on that album as well. And before you know it, I'm a massive Bruce Hornsby and the Range fan. So that's gotten us through the H's. My collection is very front half of the alphabet heavy as opposed to the lower half. In fact, I don't think I have any albums between the letters I and I think No. I don't have an album for the letter I. I don't think I have one for K or L, or like kind of in the middle there. There's like letters that I just don't have albums for. So that's roughly about half my collection we just went to, which fits. And we're only to 8. We're going from the letter H to the letter J. So you can see how front heavy my vinyls are. So I'll get back to you with that. The next time I see you, I'll bring you the second half of my ridiculously large, ever-growing vinyl collection. And all that said, I'd like to thank you so much for stopping by. I'm kind of getting back on the horse and trying to put out some more content after going a pretty extended period of time not producing a lot of stuff and just working really long hours at my job and trying to get healthier and trying to focus a little bit more on me so that I can be just healthier and more energetic in life. So all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. If you're new to the channel, remember to like, share, subscribe, hit, I almost said hit on the Patreon. Don't hit on the Patreon. The Patreon's not alive. It's not going to call you back. The link to my Patreon is in the description of this video, as well as links to other places where you can get stuff on my channel. I have a Facebook. Of course, Facebook's about to change their frickin' name in like a couple days, which kind of dates this video. So I'm not going back through all these videos and changing my Facebook link to whatever the F they're... I'm just now thinking about that. About the fact that all these people and all these various social media things, all these YouTubers, they put my Facebook is here on hundreds of videos like me, and now Facebook's literally about to change their name. I'm not going back and changing all that stuff. You better know. Oh, God, and the links are probably going to change because, oh, God, I need to stop. Anyway, I wasn't planning on ending the video on that note, so I'm just going to stop. So, whatever. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you're a new viewer or a returning viewer, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. Give me a sub if you want to. And all that said, till the next video, finishing off this collection, this has been Steve, the Amateur Historian.